there. I'm Skip Hagel, Director of Dealer Sales and Technical Services for Johnson Outboards in North America. For over 65 years, we at Johnson and our dealers have worked to make boating safe and enjoyable. Johnson-powered boats today are more reliable and easier to operate than those of just a few years ago. Unfortunately, the fact remains that the #1 cause of boating accidents is still operator error. It is also a fact that the more knowledgeable you are about boating safety, the safer you and your passengers will be. That is why we at Johnson have produced this BoatSmart video hosted by boat racing legend Chip Hanauer.
In case you're concerned that a boat racer is teaching boating safety skills, we've invited the real boating safety experts, the U.S. Coast Guard, to join us.
We present a lot of worthwhile boating safety tips. But please keep in mind, this is not a training video. In addition to watching, we urge you to sign up for one of the boating safety courses offered by the Coast Guard Auxiliary, the U.S. Power Squadron, or your local state agency. Do these things and you, your family and friends will experience years of safe and enjoyable boating.
BoatSmart, the essential guide to recreational boating safety. Brought to you by your local Johnson Outboard dealer, the Safeco Insurance Companies, and AirTouch Cellular, and hosted by racing legend Chip Hanauer.
I know what you're thinking, safe boating video. Sure, they're gonna suck all the fun out of the sport and then deem it safe. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not the case, because frankly, boating is fun, but it's also challenging. By the way, I'm Chip Hanauer. I race powerboats for a living. I've learned that in my profession, safety doesn't just happen. It's something that's learned and practiced each and every day. In fact, it's racing that's taught me one of the most important rules in boating safety. Always be prepared for the worst. When I race, I wear a life jacket, a helmet, a fire suit. There's an escape hatch in the bottom of the boat, all just in case something should go wrong. When you're going for an outing on a pleasure boat, the same general rule applies. Be prepared for emergencies.
Preparing for emergencies means making sure you have the proper safety equipment on board your vessel. Falling overboard and capsizing are the leading causes of boating fatalities. That's why Coast Guard regulations require that you have one Coast Guard approved life jacket for every passenger on board. Remember, life jackets, they float, you don't. For boats 16 feet or longer, you'll also need a throwable device, something like a life ring on board. A Coast Guard approved flare or flare gun, and in many cases a fire extinguisher. And some sound producing device like a whistle or an air horn are also required to be on board. To ensure that your boat meets all federal safety requirements, you can request a free courtesy marine examination from the Coast Guard Auxiliary.
These items, although not required by law, are still really important to have on board. For example, a first aid kit, a VHS Marine Band radio to communicate with the Coast Guard and other vessels. A cellular phone is a good thing to have on board. Be sure you have a cigarette lighter adapter and a spare battery, a spare propeller and the tools to install it, and your Johnson dealer can best advise you as to which tools you should have on board. A flashlight with extra batteries, binoculars, a chart of the waters you're going to be navigating, a bailing bucket, a boat hook, and a paddle, just in case you run out of fuel.
Before each time you go out on a boat trip, you should always let a friend or family member know what your plans are. A float plan is basically an itinerary of what your schedule is for your boating trip. Even if you're just going for a 2-hour fish trip or a 1-week-long cruise, it's always a good idea to let friends and family members know what your plans are and give them a float plan. Don't file it with the Coast Guard. If every boater filed a float plan with the Coast Guard, it would just be mass confusion. You could even just write it down on a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be as fancy as this one. Have it filed with a friend or family member who's still on shore, and if you don't return as scheduled, they should immediately contact your local law enforcement agency.
Before you learn how to maneuver your boat in the water, it's equally important to know how to maneuver it on land when it's on the trailer. One of the first things you're going to want to do is be sure that the trailer lights are hooked up. And then, of course, the safety chains. And it's a good idea to cross them over so that the right side on the trailer is on the left side of the truck and vice versa. Backing a trailer down the ramp to launch your boat is one of the trickiest operations, simply because, well, Everything's backwards.
You turn the wheel on the car to the right and the trailer goes left. You turn the wheel on the car left and the trailer goes right. If you're new to towing a trailer, you might do well to practice in an empty parking lot somewhere away from the lines that typically form at boat ramps where the pressure is really on.
There's a number of things you want to check before you actually back the boat into the water.
Start by trimming the motor up so the propeller doesn't dig in, and put out all your fenders to protect the hull.
You want to make sure that the winch cable on the trailer is tight. You want to make sure you've got a bow line on, and also a stern line. You're going to need them when the boat goes afloat. And finally, don't forget the drain plug. You'd be surprised how many times even experienced boaters forget to put the drain plug back in. There's nothing more embarrassing than seeing the boat fill up with water as you're going down the ramp. So don't forget the drain plug. Make sure the trail lock is up, the tie downs are off, and I think we're ready to go. Drain plug. See what I mean?
To launch, you want to line the boat and the trailer up in as straight a line as possible and then back it down the ramp until the back of the boat just begins to float. Set your parking brake.
Be sure and have one person on the winch and have at least one person on the bow and the stern line. Release the brake. Do so carefully, always keeping one hand on the handle. You don't want that to freewheel and hit you. Let the boat back until there's no more tension on the cable. Always reset that brake so that handle doesn't take off on you. Reach underneath, slowly push it off the trailer, and the person running the bow and the stern line will simply pull it over to the dock while you pull your car out, park it, and you're off to go boating.
Hold on. Before you go anywhere, make sure you get an up-to-date weather forecast. It happens all the time where it's a beautiful day in the morning and you go out and all of a sudden high winds come in. Another good reason to invest in a VHF marine radio. You can get frequent weather updates by tuning to channels 1, 2, or 3. Or at the very least, you should pack a portable AM radio and tune it to a channel that gives frequent weather updates.
No video can take the place of training and experience when it comes to learning how to maneuver a boat, but understanding some basic principles of boat handling will make it much easier for you.
To begin with, this steering wheel may look virtually identical to the one in your car, but driving a boat requires skills completely different than those required to drive your automobile.
Some of the basic differences: a boat turns from the back, a car from the front. As a result, they handle very differently.
A car has brakes, and obviously a boat doesn't. That's why you've got to use reverse when you want to bring the boat to a stop or to slow it down.
A boat drifts, a car does not. So you have to take into account wind and currents, especially at slow speeds.
A boat moving at slow speed turns very slowly. In fact, an outboard in neutral barely turns at all. The point of all this being that a boat steers much less precisely than a car. It requires that you really think ahead. Knowing how to operate your own boat is only part of it. You have to know how to interact with other boaters. You have to know the rules of the road, or in this case, the rules of the water.
On the water, as on the highway, there are certain rules of the road you need to adhere to. To begin with, you need to determine who has the right of way in certain situations. There's a pecking order amongst vessels. As you can see, the captain of a power-driven boat has to yield the right of way to all sailboats, commercial fishing boats, and of course, all non-powered boats like rowboats, canoes, and so forth. But what happens when two power boats meet? Then it starts getting a little complicated. Briefly, when two power boats meet head-on, they need to pass port to port, or left side to left side. When two power boats approach each other than head-on, say a crossing situation, the vessel on the right side or starboard side has the right of way. The other vessel is the give-way vessel and has to keep clear by veering to the right and passing behind the other boat. Finally, in a passing situation, the boat approaching from the stern or back typically should pass on the right and avoid the boat being overtaken. Again, there are many other details we haven't covered here. Another good reason to take one of the boating safety courses offered by the Coast Guard Auxiliary.
There aren't many gas stations on the open water, so fuel up before you head out.
First, you'll want to make sure you've turned off the motor. And if you have removable tanks and they're under 6 gallons, you want to be sure you take them off the boat before you refuel.
Close any compartments that might collect gas vapors and be sure to have all your passengers get off the boat.
When fueling, always keep the nozzle in contact with the tank opening to avoid any static electric spark, which could ignite.
And when you're done gassing up, be sure and air out any closed compartments or run your blower for a few minutes before you start up.
This is also a really good time to check your oil supply. Great, thank you. Running out of gas in a boat can be a really frightening experience. Luckily, the Coast Guard's got a great rule of thumb that can keep that from happening.
It's called the rule of thirds. 1/3 of your fuel supply should be used to get you to where you're going, 1/3 to get you back, and the remaining third for reserve, just in case.
Although most boats handle much better when they're up to speed, driving a boat at speed has its own set of challenges. You have to be much more alert, always looking out in front, keeping an eye open for obstacles, down skiers, other boaters who may not be paying attention. Keep a lookout for scuba diving flags, swimmers, and be very aware of the effect your boat's wake is having on other boats. Also, on most waterways in most states, it's the law you operate at no wake speeds when you're within 100 yards of shore, a marina, or a bridge. When you're traveling at speed, it's critical that your passengers all be seated and that no one distract the driver or obstruct their view.
Nearly every outboard comes with a trim adjustment. And what that does, it controls the angle which the propeller enters the water. If you trim it up too high, the bow comes up high and starts to porpoise. If you trim the engine down too low, the bow plows,
Creating unnecessary drag. It takes experience with a boat to determine the optimal trim.
It also takes experience to know how to safely navigate the waterways, how to read colored buoys and signs that act as navigational aids. The most common are the red and green day boards that mark the sides of a channel. An easy way to remember the meaning of each color is to use the 3R rule. Red, right, returning. That is, the red buoy should be on your right as you're returning from open sea, the green on your left. But never rely solely on buoys or markers to determine a safe position.
Water skiing is an exciting sport, but it has safety considerations all of its own. For example, you need to wear a life jacket that can withstand the impact of hitting the water at high speeds. So when you buy a life jacket for water skiing, always look for the high impact certification. You guys ready?
Make certain that in addition to the skier and the driver, there's an observer on board, someone to watch the skier in case there's trouble. If you're the driver, always look ahead and maintain a ski corridor of at least 100 feet on either side of the boat. When a skier falls, the observer raises the skier down flag. The driver returns to them as quickly as possible. It's important to remember to keep skiers and swimmers away from the back of the boat while the motor is running.
Overloading a boat is another cause of boating accidents. Each boat has a capacity plate on it that identifies the maximum number of persons, the maximum weight capacity, and the maximum horsepower it can safely handle. Don't exceed these limits.
Part of boating safety is being able to rely on the boat itself. You want to know that the engine's going to start when you need it, and the boat's going to perform the way you expect.
Johnson motors are strong, durable machines that are designed to provide years of trouble-free operation. Nonetheless, like all machines, they require routine maintenance, which your Johnson dealer can advise you on.
Because there's nothing worse than being trapped a mile offshore with a dead engine and a small fish.
There's a lot of people out there that just don't realize that boating while intoxicated is illegal. Alcohol adversely affects your balance, coordination, vision, and most importantly, your judgment. On the water, there are other factors that add to the impairment caused by alcohol, namely the motion of the boat and dehydration. It's easy to lose your balance on a rocking boat, and as we've said before, falls overboard are a leading cause of boating fatalities. Also, the sun causes you to perspire, removing water from your body but leaving the alcohol. This can cause impairment to happen more rapidly. So 2 beers at home might be different than 2 beers out in the water. You might react different. It is both illegal and extremely dangerous to operate a boat while intoxicated.
Boats don't have headlights, but what lights they do have aren't there to help you see, but rather they're there to help you be seen.
Although boat lighting varies depending on the size and the type of vessel, in the case of recreational powerboats less than 39 feet in length, there are 2 lights at the bow, red on the port or left side, green on the starboard or right side, and then 1 all-round white light near the stern.
This may seem obvious, but if you do have to be out in your boat after dark, drop your speed and use extreme caution.
Hi, I'm Pete Myers, a boat insurance underwriter with Safeco Insurance Company. Please remember that being properly insured for property damage or personal injury you may cause others while operating your boat is also an important part of being a safe, responsible boater. Your independent Safeco insurance agent can help you make sure your boat insurance won't spring a leak just when you need it most. This is Safeco's comprehensive safe boating guide. It's loaded with information you'll find both useful and easy to read, whether you're a seasoned skipper or brand new to the joys of recreational boating. To receive your free copy of the kit, just send a request by postcard or letter to this address. Safeco Insurance Companies, attention, Safe Boating Kit, T-21, Safeco Plaza, Seattle, Washington, 98185.
This video by no means was intended to be the all-encompassing guide to recreational safe boating. Instead, it's meant to cover the safe boating concepts that are common to all recreational boaters. Naturally, there's issues that are particular to the type of boat which you own, and also the body of water which you're operating on.
Be certain and protect your investment with the proper insurance policy, and if, heaven forbid, you should ever be involved in an accident, report it as soon as possible to your local county sheriff's office.
And always be aware of the rules that govern boating in your area, and keep up to date on those rules. Any boater, no matter how experienced, would do well in taking one of the many boating safety courses offered by the Coast Guard Auxiliary, the U.S. Power Squadron, or other local agencies.
Thanks for watching. Have a great time and good boating.
BoatSmart with Chip Hanauer was made possible by a grant from the Outboard Marine Corporation, makers of Johnson Outboard Motors, Safeco Insurance, and AirTouch Cellular.